Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Tom. I'm here with my dear friend, Chase Jarvis. Dude, it has been so much fun getting to know you, so I'm excited to have you
Likewise.
in a more informal setting.
Yeah, and we're facing each other. It's versus like the chairs with the audience. And I love it. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, man, for
cool
sure.
New format. I'm psyched.
I'm excited. It's been a lot of fun. We were talking about that just a second ago.
Yep.
It's nice to be able to really have a conversation. And my goal is always to push my own thinking. So we were just talking about Facebook. And one of the things that I think is problematic about where Facebook is going, there's a documentary out. I think it's called The Great Hack, The Big Hack, The Something Hack. And it's talking about all of our data and how it's being collected and how one of the problems with the Facebook algorithm, and this I think is the problem, is that what they found is things that rile people up, that get them pissed off. Yeah. The inflammatory stuff is like, man, it fucking gets people commenting, it gets them on the platform. And so that platform has sort of become that.
Yeah.
And when I look at the difference between comments, say on my YouTube stream or comments on my Facebook channel, it's radically different. Yeah. And there's something, I've been thinking about this lately, and I'm actually super curious to get your take on this. So I'm obsessed with neuroscience, so I always want to know like what the neuroscience is behind something. But there is something about, and maybe this would fall into what Jordan Peterson calls the dark triad of personality traits. There's a reason that people use the word dark on that. So when I think about inflammatory stuff, there's just a negativity to it. So if a platform is more and more inflammatory, like even though I feel the same instinct to like go fucking rage out, it's not an energy I like. So I'm like, I'm just gonna step back from this shit.
Yeah. So maybe here's something. You like neuroscience, obviously, and that the human biology is negatively oriented out of a survival bias.
Yep.
And so maybe there's a lens that's going on there with the if Facebook if its algorithm prioritizes those things and it starts it and then rewards that behavior, it's holding a candle or a
if it
flame.
Bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, and so, it's not necessarily dissimilar to if it bleeds, it leads from the 60s, 70s, 80s TV, but the part that we're hardwired to engage in negativity bias. So if it bleeds, it leads. That's something bad happened to someone else. This is like. It's because it allows for an exchange of ideas in a really inflammatory way. So I don't know.
But here's my question, and this is what's got me thinking about this lately. When I really think about that, it is not an emotion that I enjoy.
Yeah,
like I don't want to be involved in something that makes me feel that way, that has that dark energy. Like it's gross. Even so, anger has something real to it, and there are times where anger has made me feel more powerful. And so I fully understand the range of human emotion. I totally get it.
Yep.
But there's something about like wanting ill for people. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like wanting your enemy to fucking get it that I don't share in whatever makes people want that. I shy away from that socially. Like when I think about building this business, I mean, and I suppose this won't come as a surprise to anybody. And this is maybe interesting to me because I'm trying to be self-aware about the things that are driving me and make sure that I'm headed in the right direction, which is something you talk about in your new book, is just creating this company. I see how if I used inflammatory techniques, I would grow faster.
Yeah.
But when I think about what neurochemistry I want to marinate in. Exactly.
Yeah, at what cost?
So I literally don't understand.
Yeah. I think for the people who are more, and whatever is underpinning the desire for growth or recognition or comeuppance or whatever the label is, that outweighs what they want to bathe in every day, their neurochemistry. There's probably a thread to pull on there, but I think that's probably what you're tapping into. Is like you can look at that and you're like, ugh. And I don't like how it makes me feel. There are times when I will just be holding my phone and not conscious of holding my phone, and even that to me is gross. Yeah,
I get that. I liked when you talked about that in your book. You're saying, all right, you got a time machine, my rules, go with me. And I forget, was it Frida? Is that the
Frida
artist?
Kahlo? Yeah.
You're with her, and she's like, should I go and paint, or do I go to deal with the car?
Yeah.
And you're like, yo, that's a very easy thing for me to prioritize and understand
about her work,
right? Given that context from a distance,
yeah,
which is pretty interesting. And I want to pull on the thread of what you were saying, that there's probably a thread to pull there. And I think the thing that makes me really interested in this is thinking about like personality types and how much of this is like hardwired, how much of this is some people actually want to marinate in that, and how much of it is that that it is just the human survival instinct and it's universal to all of us.
Right.
And so your book makes a pretty bold, it has a pretty bold base assumption. So I find when two articulate, intelligent people disagree, there's usually a disconnection on a base assumption.
Yeah.
And the base assumption that your book is predicated on is something that I'm really thinking a lot right now, partly because I'm writing my own book and it has its own set of base assumptions. And the base assumption that your book has is that basically creativity isn't a skill. It's, I think you call it a habit or a routine.
Habit.
So how much do you think,
practice.
How much do you really, really think that anybody could, and do you think anyone could get as good as you? I think that's my real question. At photography, which is your specific discipline.
I think we all have tendencies and we have skill sets, but I think part of the problem is the definition of creativity that most people chuck around on a regular basis is the one that's a base assumption on the negative side of my argument that a counterpoint to my book would make, which is like, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to be as good at this. Well, maybe I'm not as good at Potter, or maybe I'm not as good at Archer, or maybe I'm not as good at building businesses. But the underpinning, the underlying creativity is unquestionable. We've all got it. It's what differentiates us. You like neuroscience. It's what differentiates us from every other species on the planet. We are uniquely able to put disconnected ideas together to form something new and useful. You know, you could argue that like chimps can do that and build tools, but there's a limited capacity there. And for what we know right now, that this is a distinguishing characteristic. We are literally creating machines. That is what we do. And to me, that whether I'm better at photography, there's aptitude, there are environmental, there's a million different things. And I'm not actually arguing that we can both be the same quality photographer. I'm saying that we've all got creativity as a base characteristic of what it means to be human, not dissimilar to language. Like if you study Chomsky or anything, you can say language is part of what has helped our universe, the human universe, happen. And my assumption in the book is that it was basically, there are three assumptions. One is that every person has creativity in it. Here's the baseline litmus test for this. Ask any first grade classroom, who wants to come to the front of the room and draw me a picture? 100% of the hands go up. 100%. Because there's no judgment, and they haven't been programmed, or it's really early on in their programming, rather, is probably a better way of saying it. And we haven't trained it out because we think it's cute. So there's this, everybody's like, yep, I want to do it. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's expression that's native and human, in the same way like a kid talks and you're like, oh, wow. Same way that most able-bodied people will walk. When a kid falls down 50 times, we don't say, oh, yeah, I guess my kid's not a walker. You know, we just don't say that. We're just like, okay, great. You keep doing it. And imagine if we did that with creativity. So that's one base assumption, is that
let's go a little deeper on that.
Okay.
And so you're saying that there's something inherently pleasurable or fulfilling about the creativity. What is it about creative expression that is so important that you want to make sure everybody sort of recoalesces around that and becomes that first grader again and goes up to the chalkboard?
Yeah, to me, it's as fundamental as nutrition. It's as fundamental as exercise.
To our well-being?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
And I think that's true sort of biologically in survival, but also in joy and pleasure. I think I want to get through my three assumptions before we go too deep on any one. So that assumption is that everyone's creative. We see it empirically. We feel it in our bones when we make something. Even if we don't love the outcome, we feel there's a sense of like, okay, great. You can see people like, oh, it feels good in my gut.
Right.
Even just like, it felt good to do this, to express myself, to make something. Thing two is that this is a characteristic that is moldable and adaptable. It's a habit that it's just moldable, like a muscle.
And adaptable in that you will improve in your output?
Yes, you will, and you will get just like a muscle. It is a muscle. It is a practice, not a product. And if you use it, it will get stronger. So I mean, that's why I think it's very, I use a biological concept of a muscle because it's anatomical, right?
Define stronger for me. Are you saying that your output will be more interesting to other human beings? It will be of a higher quality, or your level of joy will be higher?
I believe all of those things are amplified.
Okay.
So that's premise 2. And premise 3, if you buy, point 1 of the argument by point 2 of the argument, point 3 of the argument is that in the act of creating on a regular basis, using your muscles, there's a cognition that happens, an awareness that you have agency. So in creating small things on a daily basis, whether it's a photograph, a meal, a business, a lemonade stand, anything, you've just made something. And the making of something in that small way, it's the same muscle that we use to make our life. Okay. So it's just creativity at a different scale. Same set of muscles, different time horizon, different, daily operation, different lens. If you were talking about a camera, maybe different aperture, but the muscle is the same muscle. It's all creativity. And that's why people get bound up in, is this an art book? Sure. Yeah. If it will supercharge all of your creative skills, you'll if you're a painter, you'll become a better painter. If you're building a business, you'll be better at building businesses. But it's like a manual for life. It is like the people that you aspire to be like, or admire, or would say have some sort of success. Creativity is a core capability. They have acknowledged it. They have strengthened that practice, and it is making what they are doing possible.
It's really interesting. So is there something in there about, so going back to your first grader, they go up to the board. It sounds to me like when you said maybe they're just so early in their, I forget the exact word you
programming.
Used, yeah, the programming. Perfect. So
that's a softball there for you, dude.
Thank you. It's a good softball.
That's right.
So as people are getting programmed, sort of beaten out of them through the traditional education system, you talked a lot about this previously, that you were just sort of on a track when you were a kid and without even really thinking about it. So when I think about human flourishing, I'm guessing that's sort of where you're going with this idea, sort of everything in your life has been geared towards that. Is some of this a thesis on the sort of creativity destruction mill that is sort of the classical education, at least here in the U.S., where it's like you're taught to stay in line and to do what you're told and all that stuff? So
I think it's only partly on purpose. It's also convenient. Especially it's based on the schooling system is based on a Prussian model that is literally modeled after a factory where you put widgets in one end, you move them through a system at the same rate, and then ideally they come out the other end with the same skills at the same level, doing the same things. And that's very efficient in a world where the highest ideology is the factory. And what we have evolved beyond the factory as a means of production, as the most efficient way to make something, for example. And so the system has to change. So I don't think there's someone sitting in a room somewhere, the puppet master, saying, no, schools have to stay this way. I think certainly that is factual, and that it's an easy way to control people, and you give them all the same information, and you feed them all the same thing. But I don't think that's not actually a corollary to the book. It's not a trashing of the educational system. I have done a lot of schooling. My wife was a teacher. I went to public schools. It's just a reality of the system. It's like a byproduct of pop culture or mass culture. I also throw a similar set of stones at employment, at the job universe and the workforce. And it's counterproductive to have someone who doesn't sit down, shut up, use a number 2 pencil, go to, start at this job at this time, go to work for 40 years, get the gold watch, retire, fit into this system that the government knows how to quantify and qualify and can tag you and put you in a box. So I just think I'm not really trying to attack. I don't want to spend a lot of time attacking school. I don't want to spend a lot of time attacking the world. Those are just the way they are. So it's very practical. We're in a free market. That's what happened, mostly free. And this is a new rule book. This is the black box that the people that you look at, how they have sort of managed it, having figured and I've basically made every mistake you can in the book, hundreds of thousands in student loans, disappointed every major figure in my family, parents included, grandparents, friends, like lost a ton of money, like did all of the things. And yet here I am, I'm okay. And it's part of the to me, an opening, if you will, of the black box of how everybody that you look up to and admire has deconstructed their success, and it all follows a really similar pattern that is available to us all. Starts with creativity. We use it as a muscle, and then if you think you can, if you can start to manage creativity on a small scale with a small c, then creativity with a capital C, the ability to create the living and the life and the arc that you want, is more within your reach than ever before.
That's super interesting. So let me see if I understand all this. So the punchline is basically there's no evil man behind the curtain, but we get our creativity beaten out of us. We all have it as a kid. We all have the propensity for it. It is like a muscle. You could develop it. You could get better not only at the art that you're creating, but you can also get better at
agency.
Agency, perfect. Yeah. At having the creativity and exploring that and doing things that are creative. And the punchline to all of that is it's basically you wouldn't use the word antidote, but it's the way to counteract some of the realities or the consequences of the reality in which we live, which is a school system that is making less creative, a job way of being that's making you less creative, which is diminishing your flourishing. And so taking something, whether it's taking photos or building a Gundam robot or whatever, you're doing something creative every day that's going to allow you to go from small C creative to big C creative to begin to like plan out your life.
Boom.
Okay.
There's a couple of corollaries, a little small twist in there. I won't go into it, but I think I'm gonna put an asterisk in there, which is, this does not mean you have to quit your day job. This does not mean you have to smoke the cigarette and move to Paris. You don't have to paint. You don't have to. It is really about the intention of just awareness of creating and putting yourself back into that awareness as much as possible. So I'm betting that whoever's listening, watching the show right now, that north of 90% have taken a photograph with their phone in the last 24 to 48 hours. And even if it was a photograph of the parking spot at the grocery store, so you remembered where you parked, or the airport, or whatever. And if we just shifted a moment and paused just for a millisecond and acknowledge that this is an act of creativity, that making dinner, like you don't have to have a room that's the painting room and pull out your paints, and you don't have to find an extra 30 minutes. All these things are helpful in the same way that like carving time out to work out or to plan your nutrition, or how all those things have amplified value when you do. At the baseline, it's just this awareness of creativity and doing more of it, acknowledging that it's a muscle, and that this muscle, not only is it an antidote, but that it's the most powerful function that a human can do. That plus love.
Interesting. Okay, that was a curveball there with love. So
this is not. It's like I don't talk a lot about love, but I just think it's a powerful function in our cognition and our.
Do you see
culture.
Love like a process as well? Is it a muscle? Can we make it bigger, better, faster, stronger?
I don't know. I didn't write a book about love. I just know it's powerful just from my own experience. But I'll just say it's, to me. I'm happy to stay with creativity, but creativity is like that moment. This is a line in the book when. Dorothy steps out of black and white Kansas into Technicolor Munchkin Land. And when you turn that on, and it's literally like you start to see possibility in the quantum field, for example. I know you like quantum. It's like when you've realized that you've created something and you've done that, and then you shaped something and another thing and another thing, you start to look at the journey that you have ahead as doable, as possible. And if you didn't make anything, you would have, like, by contrast, sometimes that's a good way to learn things or to test the program, right? By contrast, if you're not actually accomplishing a goal, if you're not moving, if there's no progress, ride a bike. It's very hard to ride a bike without moving forward, right? Creativity is like this act of moving forward. And you can still be still and mindful. I want to respect the Eastern tradition. It's not about accomplishing, but it is about agency and realizing that even if your aspiration is to be still, you had to realize at some point that you were capable of making yourself still. That is a creative act.
So I will, I want to get back to love. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily with that one because I'm super fucking interested. Yeah, but I do want to talk about what you were just saying about moving forward.
Sure.
So that to me, the thing that I really struggle with in creating impact theory and all the stuff that we're doing is I don't want to bullshit people. I really want the no bullshit answer of what it takes to live a fulfilling life. That I'll call my punchline.
Okay.
Now, I think that an absolute cornerstone of a fulfilling life is the ability to what you just called moving forward. You have to be able to say, okay, there's this thing that I want. I'm going to go and get better at it. And then I'm going to be able to actually do things in the real world. So the thing I talk about all the time is skill acquisition.
Sure.
And what I want to impress upon people is skills have utility. So there is no reason to get a skill to tick a box. There is only a reason to get a skill to actually be able to do something. So I'm not using this example in the context of creativity being a muscle. I'm just saying for you,
fair enough.
Getting good at photography was a way for you to get checks from some of the biggest companies in the world to send you around to do things that are extraordinary that you would not have been able to do if you didn't get really fucking good at photography.
For sure.
Like you even talked about your dad has this great eye as a penciler, but it's like he never made a career out of that. Now, I don't know if he never made a career out of that because he never got that good or if he just didn't pursue it. But I know that you're never going to have a career at that thing unless you actually get that fucking good.
Yeah.
So like my obsession in life, dude, is how fucking malleable are we?
Yeah.
And I for a long time, I sort of accidentally thought and talked like we were blank slates, though I never actually believed that. I think there are just things that are fundamental to human being and there are sort of traits and tendencies that we're never going to be able to escape. But the more that I go down this road, the more that I'm like a little freaked out by the notion of free will maybe isn't even really a thing. The fact that there's like all this sort of underlying stuff that is different from person to person to person. And some of it is, oh God, like there are just going to be some people that are better at some things than others.
Yeah.
That is not a judgment on their worth as a fucking human. And that's one of the reasons that I talk about this dark energy is so many people that talk about this stuff, they have some fucking dark energy about them. I want beautiful things for every fucking buddy.
Yeah.
Because I want to be in that beautiful energy. I want to think about that, which is why we're going to get back to love.
Great.
But it's like, how malleable are we really? Like, as you've looked at so many people trying to like live a creative life and do what you do, and you must look at some of them. And I'm about to make the following statement with a caveat. I want them all to win. Yeah. I want to be convinced so fucking badly right now.
Sure.
But my gut instinct is some people just suck at photography.
Sure. You might suck at photography, but it doesn't. Sucking at photography it's not not necessary and sufficient that you actually don't love it, right? You can suck at photography and love it, and why wouldn't that be enough?
It's a great fucking question. So I will give you the answer. That is absolutely true. Mm-hmm. I really hope people end up there based on the potential mistakes I have made with my own belief system and my own values.
Yep.
I love painting. Really, really enjoy it. Like the act of painting, except for the fact that I'm not good at it. And so...
How many hours you got behind the canvas?
Fair. Very good question. I will call it 200?
200.
No, less than 1,000 for sure. So 1,000%, I could get way, way, way better.
Yep.
But there is something that I'll call disproportionate returns. So whenever I put energy into verbal skills, I get a disproportionate return on my time.
Totally. That's because you're inclined to that. And we're all inclined to things.
When you say inclined, what do you mean? You're saying that you're born with it?
I think you were, like what I really think is you got certain rewards as a kid. Go back to.
Do you think we're a blank slate?
No, I do think that we are, because a blank slate would not imply language, and we're
Noam Chomsky to the rescue.
Yeah.
Have you read Steven Pinker's book Blank Slate?
No, but I know enough about Pinker to be able to probably argue around it. But
interesting. Oh, please tell me, because
philosophy of language. So my background. I was very happy to drop out of the PhD in philosophy program, along with lots of other things in my life, to become a photographer. But we got too many things in the air right now. So I think we're not a blank slate. I think there are some things that we're hardwired to do. You could call it biology. And that is like the negative bias, survival bias, language. I'm specifically at what was the the thread that we were pulling.
What I'm really trying to figure out is how malleable you think we are. Now, I'm not talking about the book.
Okay,
I get your premise on the book. That's why I wanted to say, I understand it.
Okay.
Now I want to go somewhere else.
Great. So as kids, I think a lot of our psychology is molded through early wounds where we were either rewarded or chastised, and you were rewarded for being articulate. And at the dinner table, at the birthday party, whatever. And so that you have, again, it's not, you might still get joy from painting, and you said you're not good at it. I would also say you haven't. You could probably get much better.
Yeah.
But you might have a disposition that orients you toward verbal skills. And I don't know too many people who hate the thing that they're great at because we're social animals. So I make a point in the book, like, you have two things in life: figure out what you're supposed to do and then do the thing. And the thing that when you're figuring it out, certainly my experience is looking backwards. And this is, there are times I talk about the hearing the call, the creative calling. And the call is not necessarily to be a poet in Berlin. The thing, it might be building businesses. It might be cooking. It could be writing computer code. And when you stepped on that path, it's another big metaphor in the book, it felt what I call effortless hard work. The hard work was there, but it was joyful. And you had just enough ability, you could see yourself doing the thing, which creates propulsion and momentum. And to me, that is the tranche under which you're sort of, is everybody good at everything? No, we're not all good at everything because we have childhood wounds and we have a vision of ourselves.
I'm asking you a different question because I know we're not all good at everything. I don't think anyone on the face of the earth would ever take that stance, but can we get good at anything?
Yeah, I think we can get, well, it depends on, obviously there's, the definition of good.
Yeah, maybe I'll even push that a little bit. Can we get world class at anything?
No.
Interesting. You would have gone with you can get good, but you stopped shy of world class.
Yeah, because I put world class in the top 1%.
Okay.
It's like, and I don't think it's our mission to try and be world class. I don't think we have a disposition to try and get good at things that we don't love, because the social animal component to our psychology, our biology, where there's those things are chemicals that are released when you get rewarded you get a pat on the back, you get some drugs going in your system from Mother Nature, and so that biology sort of predisposes that we're going to drift towards things that bring us joy and that we're good at, and those things tend to coincide more over time. That becomes a rut, that becomes a neural pathway. Sure, can you break yourself out of it? Like, I was in the top, just small, teeny little handful of people who are the best in the world at commercial photography, making huge visions come true for big brands for high dollars that got seen by a lot of people. And I could still burn out on that. I don't have to continue to do it. I was in what they would call a rut. I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I had to expand my consciousness to do some other things, like build a business around helping tens of millions of other people do that. And that was not easy. This was my painting, maybe. I stepped in, I'm 200 hours in. I feel like I'm 200 years in. These dark circles under my eyes here. And that's part of, I think, if I'm trying to couch this in some of but what I know about you and your passion for learning, and the fact that it says always be learning or something up in the green room up there, like, that's joyful, the progress, learning, even if you don't want to become world class. So I don't know quite where you want to take this, but I do think that based on our experiences in life, we have felt what it was like to be on the path, whether it was telling jokes in second grade, or it was Foursquare on the playground in 8th grade, or band, or, the first time you made a meal and your grandma said, "Oh my gosh, Jody, you are so good at pastries." And then, you felt really good. Then you started thinking of yourself in that term, and fast forward 10 years, if you're trying to figure out what to do and you feel sad inside, sometimes you go home and you make some nice cinnamon rolls. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. Where I'm not necessarily going anywhere, but the reason that this question remains so all-consuming to me is I don't think we're blank slates. So my gut instinct, one of my earliest memories is faking not seeing Easter eggs so that my sister would win the Easter egg hunt, because I knew it meant more to her than it did to me. I am wired to enjoy seeing other people win. That doesn't mean that I don't want to win. It doesn't mean that I don't want to be the best. It's just that I really love seeing other people win as well. Yeah. So like I gravitate towards being on a team and winning with other people, and like being able to share that is so much more interesting to me. Yeah. So I think that is a predilection that I was probably born with, understanding that I wish we were blank slates, and you'll get why in a second. But I don't think that is true. So I had a predilection. That predilection then was fed by experience. So I'm sure, because my mother is very much like this. Like I was definitely rewarded as a kid for being kind to other people. And so that would have been something my mom would have lavished praise on me for doing. Like, oh my gosh, you let your sister win. Like that's so kind and thoughtful. And, you know, so definitely there was also then the reinforcing of it. And when I think about, okay, there's things that I have a predilection for that then were rewarded, that I then invested energy into, and it becomes a neural pathway, like you were saying. So that's the background to why I'm so driven to answer this question, and why it'll almost certainly be one of the driving forces behind this entire show is me trying to learn as much as I can to get to the following in 30 seconds or less, to be able to change the course of someone's life forever by being able to say some magic fucking word. I get that this probably isn't possible, so people don't need to write me about it. I'm just saying, like, when you take it out to its, like, really, what do I want to do? I've worked in the inner cities a lot. I've seen extraordinary people absolutely waste away and be fucking destroyed by their environment. And I'm trying to, as fast as I can, undo a lot of shitty programming to get them on the right path. I can't babysit everybody. I can't be their energy. I can't want it for them. These are very painful lessons, by the way, that I did not acquiesce to easily. I'm fucking in my 40s now, and I'm only just now beginning to let go of the death grip of if I spend enough time with somebody that I could help them, and realizing that it just doesn't fucking scale. So it's like I'm always looking for that insight, man. When if somebody has some part of that magic formula of like, no, get them to paint every day. And like, that's the thing. That's the breakthrough moment. Then I'll fucking kidnap people if I have to and put them in a room and make a paint, like whatever it is. But I am so compelled to understand the human mind, to understand human behavior, to understand the layer of culture. Like, I feel like if I can understand that well enough, I'll know what's bullshit, so I can avoid that. And I'll find out what actually works, so I can put more time and energy into that. Because I have dedicated my entire life, dude, to a fucking thesis. And that thesis is, you start with a story. You hit people with narrative. You give them fucking robots and stories, Dragon Ball Z, like whatever. You hit them when they're a kid. Disney obviously is a perfect example of this. You give them Spider-Man and Thor and Iron Man. You draw them in with fucking emotion and storytelling. You plant ideas in their mind. And then my thinking is, and nobody's done this before, that you graduate them then to like the fucking read this book, go paint, go take photographs, go code, whatever your creative thing is, like, and let me lay this stuff out for you. Because right now I am so fucking distressed by how much the zip code you were born into.
It's the number one predictor.
Dude, that's number fucking gnarly.
It's gnarly,
So like, I wouldn't like this either, because I don't think I have a very high IQ, but I could at least get behind that if you had a high IQ, no matter where you're born, you're going to find your way. But it doesn't even seem to be that. It seems to be that you can really fuck people up. So my hope is, if you can really fuck people up, how much can you very rapidly get them on a path where they can do rad shit?
Well, I got to take a grain of salt with what I'm about to say. So just like pinch the salt and Salt Bay that shit right now. So it's, I talked earlier about making a lot of mistakes. And I think those mistakes were largely correlated with trying to find social acceptance. I'm a hard charging type A kind of just cliche to the bone, and I hate it. And yet,
because you get so fucking myopically
and
focused,
it's just I don't know. There's a lot of negative characteristics around that kind of a personality trait, I think. And But as soon as I acknowledged that, I started working on it. It's been good. But
we're gonna have to talk about that.
To disappoint everybody in your life, virtually everybody, and let's use disappointment with a small d, okay, and to also still, to be fair, that was the hardest thing I did, was acknowledge that I'm a creator in a world that historically, and I think this is changing, and this is the stake I want to put in the ground, is that in a world that used to think of creativity and or art as a nice to have, helpful, playful, naive even. But now, with the premise that I've personally experienced, that I've watched in sitting down in my show like this with almost 200 of the world's top performers, the world's greatest entrepreneurs, thought leaders, creators, and numerous disciplines, the trait that I believe is that we are, of course, we're creative machines. And if we can unlock that aspect of it, of ourselves, that it's not a nice to have. It's like nutrition. It's like air. It's like oxygen. It is our superpower. And it's manifesting itself in really interesting ways. Look at the best companies in the world used to be the ones that had the best supply chain, or before that it was the ones that I don't need to do a regression, but like Apple computer, wildly creative, very everyone else is zigging, they're zagging. It's just also a trite example, but I'm trying to use a trite example because it's like, okay, you start to see that creativity is not just a nice to have. And when I've experienced it personally, I start to see this bubbling up in culture. It was the hardest thing I've ever done to disappoint all the people who wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or a professional athlete or all the things that were socially acceptable to become a photographer. So it was hard for me. And knowing, go back to your inner city thing, I was born white. I was born in America. I was born in the 70s. I have virtually every privilege. My parents are still together to this day, male. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Of course, it's going to be harder for other folks who have less advantage. That being said, if that were easier, if it were easier to acknowledge this part of ourselves, culturally a norm, not thought of as a nice to have, not naive, and I argue in the book very simply that this is the most practical thing, to be able to figure your way out of whatever into something different by putting two things that used to not go together to form something new and useful. That is ultimate power.
What do you think is the purpose to life?
Nintendo, I think, some sort of maybe Xbox.
Unexpected answer.
Xbox.
Very unexpected answer.
What I think is the purpose.
It's not a non sequitur. This is exactly related to what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I'll kick it back to you because you got an answer on the tip of your tongue.
I do. So, but the reason I'm asking is because I am trying to be very conscious that I have an agenda and I push that fucking agenda, but it has everything to do with the world I want to live in and not necessarily the world everyone else wants to live in. So I believe the purpose of life is to find out how many skills you can acquire that have utility and then put that utility to the test in service of something bigger than yourself. So basically get good at shit that matters to you and go fucking make something awesome. Okay. Now that something awesome can be a company, that something awesome can be art, that something awesome be the greatest school teacher ever. It doesn't matter to me what you do.
Notice you said make something.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. I buy into the whole creativity thing. Sure. I fucking love it. I think 100%. Like, I'm on board with your book. I think your book is fucking great.
Thank you.
I think people should read your fucking book. I think that you're right on the money. So my thing is, like, it's definitely a piece of something.
Yep.
And now I want to plug it into, like, the bigger picture, the, like, where do we go from here kind of thing.
Okay.
And so when I was hearing you talk, I thought, okay, it's interesting because you were talking about there's problems to being a type A, hard driving person. And I just thought, I don't know that that's true. But that it's not true from the perspective of what I'm trying to create, the world that I want to see, all of that. it may very well be perfectly true because you may be trying to live a different life. One of my favorite quotes is from Ray Dalio. Wrote a book called Principles, created the largest hedge fund in the fucking world. The guy's amazing. Mm-hmm. And he said, look, I don't know that the way that I've lived my life is the right way. Maybe living a stress-free life is actually the way to go. I just know that the way that I've lived my life is the only way I could have done it. And I thought, that is exactly how I feel. Yeah. Like, I have no interest in, that's a more truthful way of saying it. I have no interest in stepping outside of my bias on this one. So why do you want to back off being a type A hard charger?
Just because I think it creates blind spots.
Can you be real specific for me?
Sure. If we are only one way, I believe it is largely based on the stories that we've told ourselves.
Can you define type A?
No, I think I was using sort of a trite colloquial, like,
what was the thing in you that you didn't like or that you thought had negative associations or it had real problems in your life?
I think that it potentially creates blind spots when there's only one speed. One of the things I realized I crave is intensity. And if you crave it and you're able to supply it to yourself and you continue to get good results and you begin to over-index on it, is it fair to say that there's something other than intensity that you might be missing out on that has to do with a rich, balanced, whole, meaningful, fulfilled life? And so to me, that was, for example, through the lens of what you're just asking about, that was a blind spot that I would be missing out on some things. And what I found is a couple things. One, that that belief was continually fulfilled and escalated by the story I told myself. And speaking of narratives and how we're hardwired for story, when I started telling myself a different story and I started providing some space and some tools to do something other than that, and I'll just use a very simple example, meditation, that my life didn't get less awesome. It got more awesome. And, Tim Ferriss and I have talked a lot about it. He, in his book, Tools for Titans, I had a chapter in there and we talked about meditation. So myself and Rick Rubin were the two people that got Tim to take up transcendental meditation. And when I think the way that Tim articulates it was the way that I felt it as well, which is I've been rewarded my whole life for intensity, being good at whatever I would want to focus on, and that's rewarded. And if I meditate, that might take away my edge. That might take away the very thing that created all this and whatever this is, right? Whatever I was happy with in my life. And what I realized is that intensity in some places, in some ways, in some shapes, was a huge anchor. And so the thing that experiment, that thought experiment, if we're talking about here, and my actual experiment realized to me that there's more than one way, and I am not a one-dimensional person. And the story that I tell myself should expand to include some other aspects.
Can you get specific? I have obviously guesses as to what precisely you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But so here, I guess I'll give you my guess and tell me if I'm right. So in always being intense and always going hardcore to be the greatest photographer, to have the biggest business or build the biggest school or whatever, there was and now I'm painting you with my brush.
Great.
There was a neurological
You're a mediocre
state.
painter, by the way.
Yeah, that's very true. I am far less than a mediocre painter, dude. I'm a god-awful painter.
You paint me when you've had 10,000 hours. No, I'm just going.
That is a very fair statement. On this, though, I have my 10,000 hours thinking about some of these ideas.
Okay.
So my guess is that there was a neurological state, a neurochemical state, maybe a better way to say it, that you were not able to experience, that you have found intensely pleasurable, maybe the wrong word. Valuable, perfect. So that you found valuable in living, using your words, a balanced, more, you didn't say rounded, but you said balanced.
Holistic or
fulfilling life.
Yep.
Now, when you say that, is it a sense of relaxing, of letting go? Would you use words like surrender? Like, what is that state? And does it come with, like, you recently posted photos of somewhere in Washington, which I can't believe I'd never even heard of, fucking stunningly beautiful, obviously out in the middle of nowhere. The sunset, you could just feel you guys unwinding and relaxing. Is that the kind of state that had previously been absent from your life and now makes your life better?
I think that might be too far, but let me try and maybe just click back a couple notches. And it was the thing that it gave me was awareness.
Slowing down.
Yeah. And I don't even say like slow has a connotation that's the opposite of fast. And then you place value on one of those spectrums. So I just think awareness. And when you're in your, I don't know if I'd call it an addiction because that's the word you're going to pick up and run with. So I'm going to navigate around that. But when you're in your story, then I think you end up going all in on that. And there's a benefit of flow state, of, forgetting about all these things. But it's not only positive. That's positively oriented around productivity and accomplishment and all the things that flow state, good feelings, good neurochemistry. But there's also an awareness, as I'm just going to not fully juxtapose those two things, but just like put awareness in there as it feels good to be aware. This moment feels good. Being aware of my desire or my ability or my fear, that what's the mechanism that's operating underneath? Is it fear of not being loved? Because if I'm not the best at a thing, I don't know, but that's why I don't want to try and actually do the work to juxtapose it perfectly. But it's just something other than the neurochemical pathway that you've been programmed for. There's other cool shit off the road,
Yeah, to me, the thing that I worry about is, all right, so I have this message. I put it out very aggressively. And I always worry that people don't hear the part about the goal of all of this is neurochemistry, plain and simple. So the punchline of life, the definition of success to me is not money. It's not fame. It's not glory. It is entirely neurochemistry. How do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? Mm-hmm. The neurochemicals that you're awash in, do they feel good? Is it like positive and uplifting, which it's a lighter feeling. It is, as far as I can tell, as close to objectively being better as you're going to get to. But to get to that state via one note is almost certainly never going to happen.
For sure. That's a great way of thinking about it. I want the symphony.
Correct.
I don't just want my one C sharp, which is very intense, and I'm very good at playing that note over and over.
Yeah. And if you can listen to yourself, if you talk a lot about intuition. So if you listen to, I wouldn't call it intuition, but maybe that's a great word for it. I would just say it starts to feel shitty. Yep. Like you don't feel right anymore. Like I always tell the team here, if you need a random Tuesday off, take a random Tuesday off. Yeah. Like fucking listen to yourself.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to you and expect you to get your job done at a certain level. But if you're not listening to your own body, if you're not experiencing life in a way that is awesome, like this is all for naught.
Yep.
Like it wouldn't make any sense for us to implode an entire group of people trying to help other people if like the people here at the company are fucking miserable. Like it doesn't make any sense. So my thing is like, I really believe people should go hard. Why should? Because I think that there are objective truths to the human condition about what is going to make you feel good.
Yep.
And I think that progress is one of them. I think going hard is one of them. Yep. I think doing hard things is one of them.
For sure.
And I think if you don't do these things, just like if you're not creative, you are wired for this shit. And if you're not doing it, then you're not going to get the neurochemical result that you want, that I will say is success, right? That you're feeling good about yourself when you're by yourself. You are awash in chemistry that makes you feel good. It's that lighter energy that we talked about. So I think that you have to do those things. But if you're charging hard like that and your body starts going, oh, I'm not having fun right now, and you just keep fucking doing it, it's like, I get it. Like I'll always push a little bit extra just to make sure that like I'm not just being lazy, because I also know that I have the propensity to be lazy.
Yep.
And I'll use cold showers as an example. So 99 times out of 100, A, I don't want to take the cold shower, and B, I'll come up with excuses. But one time out of 100, I'm actually like, no, I really like today what I need to live the fulfilled life that I want to live is to not take the cold shower.
Yeah, I need
and when I know it's not about laziness, it's about like, it's about fulfillment.
Sure.
And
if you're sick.
Yeah, I made that mistake. Yeah.
Don't do that.
I even tried to research that one to see, because I was like, I don't like taking cold showers ever. So I really feel like I have an excuse to not take a cold shower when I'm sick. I looked it up. Jury was out. So I said, fuck it. All right, I got to take it because I don't want to be making excuses. I definitely felt worse.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there wondering,
don't do that.
Yeah, skip
well,
it.
Part of what I love about the rant that you were just on is the book. It covers all of those things, that the value of risk, the value of hard work, the value of giving yourself permission to suck as a painter is there's like, cause you went there and you did a thing, and even if you realize you don't do a thing, and it talks also about like when to quit. So all these aspects, I've grounded everything that you just said at fundamentally we're creating something, and you're either creating a thing right now, a PowerPoint for work, a meal, a sonata, a whatever, or you're creating your life. And all of the things that you just said are, I would say, aspects that sit on top of creativity. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Like, let's go to the foundation. What is it? Is it breathing? No, it's not quite holistic enough. Is it nutrition? No, it's not quite. Is it, all these other things that we think of as foundational? And that's really how I arrived at creativity.
Interesting. So you're putting creativity below biological functions?
Well, I'm putting it as it is sort of part of what the definition of being human is. And by ignoring this creativity, you're giving up on yourself.
Wow. I don't know if I can give you that one. You're saying that it's that fundamental to...
Tell me what you've done.
Yeah.
You like progress. You listed a lot of stuff that doesn't have creativity as an essential element of those things.
Well, so I'll answer that in a different way, because you said breathing, which maybe if you said breathing tongue in cheek, and
I said okay, fair enough.
Then I won't derail us, because the only thing I would say is I haven't thought through it enough to know if
you don't breathe, you don't get to create.
There you go.
Fair enough.
I was just going to say at the end of the day, people need to root. I just taught a class on this. People need to root their shit in biology.
Yeah.
Like why do you need to exercise? Because your body has this thing called mitochondria. Mitochondria makes ATP. Without ATP, your cells actually die. Like they die. Yeah. They break apart. Yeah. They no longer hold your form together. You become dirt again.
Yeah.
So it's like there is a very real thing to be faced with. We are, and this is one of those. Depending on what your baseline perspective is, it can be really fucking hard to talk to people. Yeah. Like when I talk to somebody who doesn't think that, if they believe in a ghost in the machine, right? Sure. Then I'm going to sound like a crazy person, because all I'm ever trying to do is go, I need to understand the biology of that. Because once I understand the biology of it, then I feel like I can take advantage of that. So for instance, if I understand the biology of ATP, then I'll work out, because I understand that I can create more mitochondria. If I create more mitochondria, then I'm able to not only make the energy system more efficient, but I actually create more energy because I've got more mitochondria. Now, I might not have come to that conclusion if I didn't understand the biology.
Sure.
So, and speaking of that, I'm going to take us back to love.
Okay.
Because when you said that was part of what made me so curious is, I certainly would not be able to explain the specific biology of love, but what I want to know is, how much do you think you can, if I wanted to use a romantic word, I would say manifest love. If I wanted to use a more grounded word, I would say,
connection.
Just like that you can feel love. Like if you close your eyes and I say, imagine smiling.
Sure.
You can do that and you actually feel something, even though you're just imagining smiling. So like to just capture the sentiment of love. So you likened creativity and love as the two most powerful things. I wish I could remember the word you said, but it was something like to do. Like we could do love, which I found very interesting. Is that the right way of describing it?
Probably not. So that's why I'm kicking myself now that we're getting critical that I was casual with the word love, but I do with all your biology.
But it must mean something.
Here we go
to you.
With all your biology and mitochondria. I want to ask you a question, and to me, that's why connection is a really good stand-in, at least for this. In terms of our argument here, our positioning. do you know that a human being, a baby who's recently born, if they are not held, they will die?
Yeah. It's bananas.
Okay. So how do you put that in your mitochondria and smoke it?
And smoke it. Well, what's interesting is, are you saying, is there something about when I break it down to biology that bothers you?
No.
That seems too sterile?
No. I remember I was a scientist for the first 3/4 of my, or for the first half of my life.
And would you say that is there some, I'm reacting to you saying, how do you put that in your mitochondria and smoke it? So I'm trying to figure out, it sounds like there's something maybe too cold.
No. To me, I'm looking at an exception.
Is there something mystical about connection for you?
I don't know. This is why I'm asking the question.
So for me,
I don't have an answer, but I was curious what your answer would be.
So mine would be while I am not yet the person I want to be, because the person I want to be would be able to give you the neurochemistry of that. So I'm not yet that person, but I firmly believe that it would be a pretty off-the-shelf thing for a David Eagleman, for instance, to explain, where he could, who's a neuroscientist, he could tell you exactly what's happening, the cascade of events that causes you to secrete whatever it is, serotonin, dopamine. It's probably, there's 3, I think, neurochemicals that are pretty implicated in love.
Sure.
I'm forgetting the 3rd one right now. So my gut instinct is that would be a pretty easy thing for a certain type of person to explain. But here's the fun of life for me. That I love this sort of like almost mystical, like not understanding it, as I think that when I can grapple with the science of something, it becomes a more malleable thing for me.
Right.
But without that, like it's still, like you said earlier that I like quantum physics.
Yep.
Now, the thing that I find interesting about quantum physics, because I don't pursue it in any meaningful way whatsoever, but it tickles a part of my brain that makes it so clear that there's something so fundamental that I don't understand.
Yep.
And I like that sensation. Now, I don't entirely know why I like that sensation, but I find it deeply pleasurable.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that it's the same things that astronauts have when they look back at the Earth and they think, oh my God, like we're so insignificant. Yeah. But there's a beauty to that somehow. There's a poetry to that.
For sure.
And that's what I see in quantum physics is, I'm so fucking stupid compared to somebody who really understands this stuff. And I don't make a value judgment on it. I'm just talking like from an IQ. My brain can't process that shit. I'm not being humble. Like I would get better. I would get, let's say, 11 times better. If I went and studied and all that. So I get it. I haven't clocked my 10,000 hours. But none of that comes easy. None of it is intuitive. It all seems so fucking weird. But it gives me a beautiful, poetic feeling of like, whoa, I don't fucking understand this. This is so weird.
And
how is it a particle and a wave at the same time? How does one photon go through 2 slits? This is fucking weird. And then David Deutsch's whole thing about, oh, you can keep going with an infinite number of slits. It'll go through all of them. So that is so crazy. And yet so beautiful. So I love the sort of mystic side of love.
And quantum physics posits the mystical. That's ultimately what it's doing,
and
right?
Are we defining mystical as
non-local interactions? The idea that a butterfly flaps its wings on the other side of the world, and yes, that does create a hurricane on the other side. Like non-local interactions, I think it's Bell's theory. Is
you can make it up? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. It's I think that's what it is. Or I don't know. But non-local interactions, basically, like things that are not connected in space. When one happens, something a long ways away, or in some laboratory in a different room in a different box, can flips one way and that flips a bit the other way.
Quantum entanglement. That shit's crazy.
So, I think to use your word, like surprise, delight, joy, awe, all these things that are just like, fucking, this place is crazy in a good way. Now, here's the thing that I was curious about, and this is maybe a little bit divergent. It goes into the philosophy of science, which is all science is ultimately consistently proving itself to be wrong.
Yes. Yes.
So the most simple example that I can give is, let's just go to physics.
Yep.
We used to think that Newton nailed it, right? Things fall to Earth at 8.2 meters per second square, whatever it is. And that worked really good for everything they could measure around Newton's time and, 50 years after. And then, this Einstein guy comes along, and Einsteinian physics comes along and says, no, it's not 8.2 meters per second squared, because if you open a mile up in a plane and it doesn't actually fall at 8.2 meters per, I hope I'm getting this right. I don't remember my 8th grade physics, but that things don't actually fall at that rate. It's just a little bit different.
By the way, if you covered this in 8th grade, your school's a lot better than mine.
Okay, maybe it was college. And then the quantum mechanics. And ultimately, all these things are proving the thing that came before it as
100%.
inaccurate.
We don't know shit.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that it's a constant realization that what you said you knew 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 2 centuries ago is false.
Right.
What is false about the mitochondria? Then you can be so passionate about it right now, and it works good. And I have a sign in my yard that says Black Lives Matter, that no human is illegal, that science is real. Like, I put it on that level, and yet, math even requires that we make up some rules in order to play it.
But here's what's interesting to me about science, and I am not a scientist, man.
Sure.
So just this is one man's, follow my logic. I think that the best advice I ever got is when you don't know something well, just tell people, here's my logic.
Sure.
So my logic about science is this. Science is the quest to find out why we're wrong.
Sure.
And the second you stop asking, what don't we know? What's wrong here?
Sure.
That's not fucking science.
For sure.
Like saying this is definitive. We know this shit. Oh, and I think it was Max Planck who said, if you think that science advances because people recognize the truth of some new piece of information, you were wrong. Science advances because the old guard dies and the new guard grows up believing it to be self-evident. And it's like, what the fuck? If you know that's true, why cling to shit so dogmatically?
Totally. Yeah.
So I love the saying, I have strong convictions loosely held. So I have strong convictions for sure because they seem true. And one, you have to operate based on what you believe in the moment, based on the best information available.
Totally.
If your dumbass sits paralyzed because you know that we don't know everything, that's fucking stupid in my opinion.
Totally.
And if your dumbass is like, I could never be proven wrong and therefore I'm closed-minded, that's also stupid.
Totally.
Because
to me, this is the answer. And this is like, if you, not to interrupt,
please.
But I'm gonna grab it here, which is the ultimate, what I took out of one of my philosophy of science classes in whenever.
8th grade.
And I wish it was. I'm glad it wasn't. Rather, is exactly what you just said right there. And it's not that it's false; it's degrees of false. Like it's not entirely untrue. It was true for what they knew at the time, and as the tools get better, and as knowledge expands, and et cetera, that it's getting more refined. And sure, sometimes we do a 180 on things, but usually it's a linear progression. It's a curve that we're like, you could say we were getting smarter. So I don't want to.
That's an interesting idea. Culture stacks, man.
Yeah.
The we're getting smarter.
Yeah.
I'm really fucking interested by that concept of standing on the shoulders of giants. And what are those shoulders? Those shoulders are culture. And this is why, like, I'm so fucking afraid of, like, and that is the right word. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I'm so afraid of the culture wars because it's so fucking dogmatic.
Yeah.
But when I think about that it does matter, it's like at some point, if you're doing something that doesn't uplift people, if you're doing something that doesn't allow knowledge to stack and carry on from generation to generation, like you're holding shit back. Like that one really freaks me out. And I hope people smarter than I get it together and fucking figure out how to disseminate a culture that's really empowering to.
And honestly, like, I, not to take it back to the book, but
let's talk about the creative.
No, but that's like, but it, to me, the books that I had experienced about creativity were so inaccessible, right? It was either Austin Kleon's like Steal Like an Artist, which is amazing. It's a little.
What did you just say?
Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist. Austin is a friend, and he wrote a cool book, and it's about creativity, and and he's got a series of them. That's like, it's beautiful and simple, but all the other ones are so academic, and even like The Fear of Art or Art and Fear. The Artist's Way. It's a lot about the doodling and the doing and it's workbooky and to me, I needed to write a book that I felt like was ruthlessly practical. And that's why the foundation, I put it so fundamental that creating and putting things together gives you, and in doing it in small ways, gives you the ability to see, to not betray yourself, and to actually give yourself the ability to have living the life that you believe you are capable of.
Go in on that. How do you betray yourself?
If you deny your creativity, I posit that you've betrayed yourself.
Because you'll never fully discover the life that you could have because you don't have the creativity to map it out?
Yeah, or not just to map it out, but to actualize it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think to me it's also it has to be rooted in popular culture. Like these are I'm trying to make it ruthlessly practical in a sea that thinks of it as berets and Paris and poetry. And it's not those things. Sure, that is a subset, a teeny weeny little subset of creativity, but it is this. We are, talk about not being a blank slate. We have this creative plutonium in us that is good for 1,000 lives, and if it's just like anything, like you fuel that and it gets more powerful. If it's a spark and you blow oxygen on it, it gets brighter. And to me, to be able to think of creativity is as so practical, so pragmatic, that's where the sort of the bit flips, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I was told, and we're not taught this, right? We're certainly not taught that. We're given platitudes like you can do anything, but we're never told where to point it. And it's also, if you juxtapose, again, it's a good way to see contrast, is like, oh, painting or art or creativity is so whimsical. You're never really actually told what to do otherwise. Like play the stock market, science. It's just that creativity. It's because, go back to the mystical thing. It's just got this crazy power. We don't understand it. Sometimes it really works. Sometimes it doesn't work so good. Some people handle it. Some people don't. We just sort of like label it. And so I'm trying to, in a very pop culture, simple way, hold up the thing and look at it and say, crazy pragmatic. Crazy powerful.
What do you mean when you say in a pop culture way?
Just uses contemporary examples. Like if you are creativity, there's value to creativity in and of itself. But if you want to, for example, progress, to go back to your word, then not sharing your creativity is going to undermine your ability to progress. Not just in skills, but to take those skills and put those skills to use, like you like skills, and because skills create your ability to achieve or to manifest or whatever the right word is. And that's why there's a huge piece in this book about community and about there are communities that you join that are further along than you are, where you can tap into some juice and some mojo and like, oh, I'm joining the photography community or the neuroscience community in your case. And there's also the community that you build around your own work. Even if you're a blacksmith in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and your community is the 10 restaurateurs that come to you to hammer out your knives. Like, it's not about having 1 million Instagram followers. But we are social animals, and taking your craft, the thing that you're creating, and having it be a part of something larger than you is valuable. In your word, you would use progress. So I think part of when I say it's couched in popular culture, it's like, no, there's the tactical. It talks about cold showers in here. It talks about permission to suck. It talks about taking swings. It talks about managing risk like an entrepreneur. There's stories of failure, my own failures, my own massive failures, and the ways that people like Richard Branson protect their downside. I'm not like, we've painted failure as this cute thing, and sure, you got to take some swings, but it'd be nice if you didn't fail. And here's some ways to protect against that. Mm. So it's just, it tries to be a guide through that black box. It was so hard, and I used to not be creative, and now I have a company, Impact Theory, and we have millions of people that pay attention to what we do. Great. I don't necessarily, it's nice that now I've bought into the story, the arc of the story, A and B, and I want to know what happened between A and B. So the book also is very tactical, and like, here's literally the steps that one would take. The book is written in a framework so that it's a repeatable creative process, whether you're talking about baking a cake or building a dream life.
Are you familiar with transcranial magnetic stimulation?
No, I've had a lot of cranial sacral massage in my time, so
a little bit different.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
So when I think about creativity,
sure.
I naturally gravitate towards the visual arts, which may be a mistake. But one of the things that I am intrigued by is you can take somebody and put one of these devices up to their head, and you aim it at a certain place and zap them. It shuts off a part of their brain, and then they can draw better. which I find really interesting.
Inhibition.
Yeah, that
Is
there's
like a shot
so
is it like a shot of I don't know, Casamigos tequila or something? I mean, is it
well, I think they have very different effects, but yeah, same idea. So you've got the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres of the brain.
Yep.
And some of the new stuff coming out in brain science is like, look, it's fucking impossible to tell you what region of the brain does what. But because it's deeply complex,
Yep.
and it's like a lot of different regions in a certain pattern at a certain level of intensity gives you a certain thought, feeling, emotion, whatever. But the fact that the corpus callosum is largely an inhibitory pathway is probably the right way to think of it. There's something there about training for creativity, about there being possibly, and again, follow my logic. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I just find this particularly interesting. So if transcranial magnetic stimulation knocks out a region of the brain, and that is what allows some people to be able to draw better, how much of the process of becoming more creative is actually turning things off, whether it's part of the narrative, which may be a little bit simplistic compared to the like true neuroscience of it, but how much of that is going to be an unlearning process? I don't know if you've thought about that at all.
I haven't.
So,
I do know that judgment is like, that there's all kinds of, I think the word's apocryphal stories that are, we don't necessarily know if they're true or not, but like the pottery teacher divided their class into two groups. You were graded on one piece. You better get really good to make one amazing piece. And you all are measured on the volume, the number of pieces that you output. And when looked at the results, not only did the people who made a lot of stuff make a lot of stuff, but it was also way better. And so there's this volume and a reduction in inhibition when you realize that you're not being judged. And you can call it flow, you can call it lack of inhibition, you can call it electromagnetic shotgun, whatever the hell you just called it. But I don't know what's going on there, but that's certainly a thing. And then again, that's an area that to me, it's an important part of the book, which is ultimately part of, there is certainly an ego and self-expression, and this is my stamp on the world. This is the lens that Tom wants to bring to build the new Disney, to do the thing. Like, the best way to do that is you have to experiment. You have to take a lot of swings in order to feel what your thing is. I talk about a system of deconstructing. I call it DEAR: deconstruct, emulate, analyze, and repeat. The deconstruction is like looking what's working for other people, emulate those people, and then analyze what's working for you, for them, for your process, and what's not, and then repeat. And the logical question that follows is like, well, wait a minute, aren't you just going to then look like everybody else because you're deconstructing them, analyzing them? And no, the repeat that's where you get what you are, because you can only really do you if you do it a bazillion times. And both saying that on the positive and the negative, like you only get to be good if you do it so many times and realize that your skills are getting better, but it's also in the doing that you realize who you actually are, because that's something that comes from in here. So to me, I don't remember how I got started on this thread, but like that's a material, tactical thing that is happening in the black box, that it's not just how did I start here and get there? Like, give me some stuff. And so big lofty ideas like creativity is the foundation to basically your ability to create the living and life that you want. So yes, actually painting makes you a better surgeon. But also like, here's how to do it. Cold showers matter. Taking care of yourself. The starving artist is a myth. That when you're super high, you're really creative. There's a very short tail to that.
So we got started on that because we were talking about the corpus callosum, inhibitory impulses, which I want to get back to.
Oh, judgment. That's where it was.
But this the notion of art by the pound, I find that story so fucking incredible. Yeah. I'm in such violent agreement with the idea that if you want to do you have to do it like a billion times. You've got to. Ideas in equal ideas out. I think it's one of the most important sort of faux math equations in the world. And I used to think that, oh man, like I've come along too late. You said you're born in the 70s. That's like an advantage. I thought, fuck, I'm born in the 70s. And so let me finish this thought, and I don't want to forget the Unabomber.
Sure.
So I'm born in the 70s. Fuck, like it's too late. All the original ideas have been thought and all that, which is that's why the Unabomber was bombing people, by the way. He thought that the universities were destroying this sweet spot of accomplishment where it's like really fucking hard, but it's doable. And he was like, universities are eroding that. There's going to be nothing left, and humans can't flourish unless they're able to do that. Now, I don't know how the fuck I got there. When I was a kid, I had this whole Salieri complex where if you've seen the movie Amadeus, it was like this guy Salieri, who I think was a real person, was cursing God because he was like, why did you make me just talented enough to realize how much more talented Mozart is than me? And that'll never be that good. And so that was like this place that I got stuck in, was like, oh man, like I'm just smart enough to realize that I'm never going to be that good or that talented at something. And that like really, really fucked with me. And finally being able to change that story, get out of that space so that you can begin to realize, okay, you're going to take in a lot of ideas. You don't need to worry if you have any original ideas. You're a synthesizing machine. So even if all you're doing is a new combination of all these old ideas, that's absolutely fine.
Yep.
And you will create something that is never seen before and will never be seen again because you're such the unique product of your initial wiring, the parents that you were raised with, the environment that you grew up in, the time that you grew up in. It all makes for this really unique cocktail. And if you stop thinking, putting the weight on your shoulders of having to come up with something original, bring this all back to the art by the pound.
Yeah.
If you stop like trying to create this one fucking great masterpiece that nothing like this has ever existed before.
Yeah.
And you just realize, look, I am in a unique moment as a unique person, and I'm going to stuff my face full of a lot of different stuff. And then I'm just going to create and get through the thousands of bad ideas that you have to get through. Certainly as a writer, I felt that. When I first started writing, I was god awful. Oh my God. And it is like a law of nature that you have to write all the really bad ideas to start getting to some of the good ideas. But as you're doing that, and the failure and the embarrassment and the pain, and there is a lot of psychological pain. If you, because I fancy myself an artist, like that is my self-identity as an artist. And when you fancy yourself an artist and you are creating shit and schlock, but you're really fucking trying, man. Like I was really trying. I was spending a lot of hours. I was not like doing anything other than really going after it. And so when you're putting yourself out there and it doesn't come out well and you're looking at it and you're judging it, forget what anybody else is saying. And you're just like, this is objectively terrible. And you're like, I will say I was not being humble. It was objectively terrible. And being able to have a narrative that tells you, and in the book, I think you call it make it till you make it.
Yeah.
To just keep going, keep making shit.
Yep.
Art by the pound, baby.
Art by the pound.
Art by
baby.
the pound.
Everything that you just said is in the book, like in spades. I think I wish I need a download of that so I can play that in my headphones on my way to my, to Oprah. So like that is, to me, that is just beautiful. Everything you described. And let me give you one mindfuck. Writing a book about creativity when writing is not your primary mechanism for expression. I'm just good enough to get by, not good enough to be great. It crushed me. And it also saved my ass.
Interesting.
So here's how it crushed me. All the same things that you just said. Like, I am not fast. I'm a slow writer. In a PhD program in philosophy, learn how to write pretty good. It's very technical. It's sort of jargony, and it's just like, and that's not the voice that I have, isn't it? And then I wrote 1,000 blog posts on my blog, and that helped me develop my voice. Then you sit down to write a book. You get just good enough to have the agent and the publisher high five and like, we got a great one. And then you're writing a book about creativity. And in a major thesis, again, in the book is that the way to get back to yourself is just to create. And I have come to find out that I've been doing a lot of other work, a lot of work around Creative Live and a lot of work in things that are not native to me. And writing actually had this profound effect because I got up at 4:30, 5 in the morning, wrote on weekends, and it's been doing this for a couple of years. It had the profound effect of just, use the word kajam, just it like fixed the broken part of me that wasn't tapped into my creativity. It was like therapy. And here's the crazy part is I'm writing how true this shit is. I'm in a mode that I'm really not all that creative right now because I got my brain in too many things. And the act of just sitting down and writing every day, what Anne Lamott in Bird by Bird calls shitty first drafts, it was basically like therapy. And so the act of writing a book, of creating through writing a book about creativity where I was preaching all the things I knew but wasn't actually doing, and then I did the process part of it, which is just sitting down and cranking out shitty first drafts. It was like gold. It was like a slingshot.
That's really interesting.
Crazy.
So putting this in context of you becoming one of the like elite photographers and deciding, I need something new, was writing the book therapeutic precisely because it was at that area where it's like, this is really fucking hard.
Yes.
I'm really stretching.
And I'm uncomfortable. And is this a failure? And, I trace the psychology of the creator. Oh my God, this is amazing. I can't wait to get this idea out there. Oh my God, this is kind of hard. Wait a minute. What have I done? This sucks. I suck. That's the low point, right? Yep. And then you're like, okay, maybe it's survivable. Okay, I'm just going to get it done. Oh, hey, this is kind of good. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of this. So that, and I went on that journey big time with the book. And so it was like,
talk to me about going from the trough, the I suck. We're past this sucks. We're now at I suck.
Yeah.
How does the therapy begin?
Well, it takes the whole thing because you have to take the good with the bad. The actual upswing at the end there after I suck is you just keep writing, and again, writing or fill in the blank on anything.
Is what made it therapeutic though that you started getting better?
I don't know, and it doesn't matter. And this is the cool part. It literally doesn't matter if you just keep going, and then a little glimmer, and then a little more glimmer, and then I improve a thing, and then. I actually said this to myself at like 5:15 in the morning on some Sunday. You know what I'm really good at now? I'm really good at typing. Because I had written 150,000 words for an 80,000 word book. I'm just like, and that is a terrible thing to desire to be good at, maybe. And certainly was not on my list of top 100 things to do. But when you're in that mode and you're in your darkest hour and you're like, hey, I got good at typing at least. So there, to me, it's just the doing the work part of it. I would park that in the 10,000 hours. You're getting better, and you're also. I'm a big believer, and the book has a bunch about mindset in there. Like you start to be able to control your self-talk.
There's something potentially really powerful here, though. So I'm going to have to push you past If the answer is it doesn't matter, then I want to give you a chance to maybe reinforce that. And I'm asking this because one thing that I get a lot is people will reach out to me. They're following me. They're trying to do the things that I advise them to do about gaining skills and getting better and applying them. And some percentage of them lose steam because they're at the this sucks, I suck, right? So they hit that part. And my gut instinct would have been, what you need to keep doing is keep going until you get better. Mm-hmm. And if you find that you're trying to attack something where you don't have the prerequisite sort of underlying ability, whatever that is, however much of the equation that is, I don't know. But like for me, I could get better at singing. I don't think I'll ever be a beautiful singer. So that could be a limiting self-talk. And I actually don't know. I've not spent the time. But if that is true, that there are just certain things, like you said, that we can get good, but maybe we're never going to be world class. I have always assumed that they are stuck there, that either they just haven't continued going to garner the necessary skills, or they're in a vein where they're never going to get good enough for it to be therapeutic. So it is not in my experience that simply continuing is therapeutic, but maybe because I've just never done it. So I'd love to know if you think now, reflecting on it, if because your book is well written. So if you say that, like, sure, like there are writers that are much better, I will grant you that you and I both suffer from the same thing, that there are better writers that have existed on this planet. But it's well done. It's very well done. So I wonder if that's part of the therapy, or if you have a breakthrough moment for people right now who they're doing something and maybe they just need to keep going, even though they're never going to get to the level that they want to get to.
Simple 2x2. Is it working? Do I love it? If it's not working and you don't love it, what the fuck are you doing? If you love it and it's not working, keep going. If it's working and you don't love it, then you have a question to ask yourself. And what's the other 2x2? It's not working and you suck. It's working and it's... Just do the 2x2 and the answers present themselves. This is from a friend of mine, Chris Gillibo. And I think there's a couple of other folks that have thought about it. So if you are finding joy or if you're not finding joy because it just gets so hard, but you believe there's value, then keep going.
Have you read Grit by Angela Duckworth?
40 pages of it.
Oh man, it's worth it. Finish it.
Yeah.
There's a really cool part in there, because this is where, so my whole no bullshit, what would it take, right? Getting beyond the platitudes and all that,
Sure.
and getting to like the real sort of the ugly parts and being able to push past those. She talks about part of grit is its passion and tenacity over time. And a lot of times people will get really into something at the beginning and then they quit and they just tell themselves, well, this is one of the 2x2s. I wasn't enjoying it. And so then they go to the next thing and they're really into it for a minute. And then they're like, I'm just not enjoying it. And they go to the next thing and not enjoying it. And she said, at some point, this is a you problem. Yeah. This isn't a truly like, oh, this is just you found another thing you don't enjoy. This is a you succumbing to the friction of like, this is also hard.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when people mistake being thirsty for being hungry, and so they just keep eating when a glass of water would have done the trick.
Yeah.
And what do you say to people who they keep hitting the, oh, this, I just don't like it. I don't like it.
I would tend to agree with her that there is a point where it's a you problem. I think that point is pretty far down the road for most people, especially if you got better at starting things that you thought you might like. Because I think if you're starting things that you might like and you realize that you hate everything, it's pretty clear it's a you problem. It's rare to me that I've, again, having been somewhat of a counselor or a career advisor or whatever, either if through distance universe with Creative Live, where tens of millions of people have learned stuff, or in my own tribe, I find that when people turn to things, their first couple of swings are usually things that they should or ought to do, would be helpful or valuable, or all these things that the culture has programmed them, their parents or whatever. Oh, you're creative? Great. Why don't you create a really cool and very valuable company around computer programming? Whatever. Versus the thing that they actually love. And that goes back to my, your correct assertion that I'm big on intuition. And that's it. The book is called Creative Calling, not for an accident, because we do have this calling and it's in there and we've tapped into what it feels like before. And my experience with people who will come to me with the problem that you're posing right now, which is like, I start and then I just, and I start and and it's like, I think you're starting in the wrong place. Why don't you take another beat, and the answers aren't out here somewhere. Your mom's not going to tell you what you're good at. In fact, your mom's probably going to be the worst advisor. Mom, dad, close friends, brothers, sisters. It's very hard to get really good advice from that subset of humans. Best stuff is this quiet internal, compass that we have. And I think we get there not with a map, but with a compass. And that compass arrow is going, as you walk around the corner, the compass arrow points over there, but the trail doesn't go over there.
Give me the reality of what that is in real life.
We don't get anywhere in a straight line.
But I'm saying, so you've got a compass. What's it pointing at? What's the north that it's wobbling towards?
I would say, in your heart. It's the thing. It's pointing at your heart. And you got yourself close enough. You're on the path and you started walking on this path and it was pointing due north. And for a while it was straight. and then you had to diverge from that path, and you saw, if you were paying, you're just walking, and then you look down and you're like, oh shit, my heart says I should go a little bit left.
I have a hardcore thesis about this.
Ooh, cool.
I'm curious to see what you think.
Throw it down.
So I think people, many people, at least in their adult lives, they don't want anything. And I think that wanting is, it is a process. I don't think that we're born with really strong wants. So for instance, I want to be a filmmaker, and I would not have wanted to be a filmmaker 600 years ago or 1,000 years ago. That would never have occurred to me, right? Because it didn't exist. So I think that we are born with a propensity to desire, but I don't think that that is pointed at anything in particular whatsoever.
Sure.
And I think that you have to cultivate it. So you gave the analogy earlier of you have this little spark and you blow air on it and it's going to burn brighter. I think the big problem is people don't know how to make that little ember. One, they don't know how to hear it. Mm-hmm. So the intuition, the voice. Actually, I may be with you on that one. I think that most people hear a whisper and they're not able to connect that, I could make something meaningful out of that. For sure.
Because that's the programming says that whisper, naive, ignorant, not the thing you should be doing. It's not practical. It's not all those list of things. So they hear it, and then the programming shuts it down. And the book is trying to get you to, no, that is gold. That little thing, that's gold. Is it weird? Great. Whatever made you weird as a kid is going to make you great as an adult.
That's interesting. Whatever made you weird as a kid.
That's James Victory. Whatever made you weird as a kid is make you great now. So look into the weirdness. What were you sort of afraid of or ashamed of or whatever? And for me, I loved performing. I loved helping create a narrative, taking people on a ride. As a first, second grader, I used to tell jokes and do magic in front of my class. And then I overheard my second grade teacher tell my mom at an open house that Chase is way better at sports than he is at art. And I was like, okay, later art, I'm going to go to the thing that I'm going to get rewarded for. And like, I don't know. I think you're picking up what I'm putting down, that we have these, it's inside of us. We can listen to it. We're told not to. And I'm trying to build up enough of a callus, enough of a muscle, an awareness, and basically some chutzpah to actually do the thing, to disappoint, to be willing to disappoint all the other people in your life in order to do the thing that you're supposed to do. Because when you do that thing, when you're on your path and you're listening to that call, and the call is not always loud and it's not always right in front of you, but it's always there. Get good at the inside part, that is an incredibly valuable process.
Man, I agree with you. So diving in though, this shit is complicated because here's the truth. It takes a lot of fucking time.
Yep.
You have to make money. You have to eat. You have to pay rent.
Sure.
It usually starts as a whisper. So the quote unquote calling is, and I'll flash you back to when I was a kid.
Okay.
I loved video games. And now kids today, that's like, oh yeah, you can be a millionaire playing video games. Dude, back in the 80s, you were a fucking bonehead.
Your Atari 1600 did not cut it. Pitfall, not going to be rich.
Exactly. So it was just a different time.
Yeah.
And so the whisper,
called 8-bit.
Yes, even before that, Jesus, worse.
Yeah.
But the whisper in my mind was always like, oh, well, I would love to play video games. That would be rad. Like if I could make a living playing video games, I would be the happiest person alive. So that's the whisper that I hear. Then it's, when I think about trying to make a living though, I'm like, oh shit. Like, yes, I would disappoint my parents. So that's already a big thing.
Check.
The whole world thinks that you are a moron if you're pursuing that, because there's no logical path to making money doing that. And when you start thinking about like, whoa, like how would I make a living? How would I really face down all the disappointment and stuff? It gets really hard to move forward because it's not this burning desire. And that's why I think a big part of this is people have to figure out like, what are you going to choose to make the burning desire? So maybe part of what we can follow the path of you going so far down the athletic road. So you overhear that comment, you decide to do something you're getting rewarded for, and I'm sure you got rewarded more and more and more. You said you got into photography because so many people were taking pictures of you because you were so fucking good at soccer.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a lot of reward. So you get how that then becomes like this intensified, magnified desire. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do you do that when you're not getting rewarded? So you have a little fucking whisper in your heart. You still have to eat, but like, how are you going to like fan those flames? Because no one on the outside is going to fan those flames for you.
For sure. They're going to throw mud.
Right. So what is your recommendation for people who they hear the whisper? It does not feel like a calling. It feels like a fucking whisper. And they're not getting any external reward for it yet.
Don't betray yourself. I'm big on the word betrayal. And I think you ignore, you suppress your creativity. It's a betrayal. And that calling, then, you know, I think about it in terms of, I made a film. I think I was either 7 or 8. It's called The Sons of Zorro. Washed cars in the neighborhood, raised enough money to buy film, to borrow a neighbor's camera, to shoot, direct, act in my first film, screened it, made money.
Not bad.
And I remember thinking, God, wouldn't it be cool if I could just do this? I mean, I was like 8. Like, why would I do anything but this? Like, my parents say that money's good. I had to work really hard doing things I didn't really love, washing cars, in order to do this. And when I had money, I did this and I made money. I mean, this is like a little 8-year-old entrepreneur, right? And I just think of, I nearly betrayed that kid because I got caught up, as everyone does, in the shoulds, the oughts, the musts. And those are everybody else's shoulds, oughts, and musts. I got pulled into, I enjoyed sports, but it was a pressure to keep going even when I didn't want to keep going. I got sucked into medical school because it's prestigious. No, it costs me $100,000 to not do it. I got pulled into graduate school in philosophy because it was another way to become sort of a half doctor, a PhD instead of the MD. And all of these things were basically society's way of, they were negotiating the thing that I, like derivations of the thing that I really wanted to do. And I just couldn't say it out loud because I felt ashamed. I felt scared. I felt I didn't want to disappoint the people that were closest to me. Notice that I have all the privilege that we talked about earlier. So if you're not me, white, male, how much even harder it would be to pursue those things. If you can tap into that, even for a moment, and do the thing. The answer to your question is show, don't tell. If someone you love sees you doing the thing and you get joy, you don't have to say like this overt outward declaration, I'm going to become a YouTuber. And you're like, you are a surgeon. What are you doing? We have a mortgage. Our house is $10,000 a month. Our blah, 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 blah. Like, if you just started making videos and sharing them within the doctor community or whatever community you wanted to make videos, at first they'd be like, what are you doing, Marv? And they're like, Marv, that's a pretty good video. Marv, you have thousands of people watching your videos. And then you said, you know what? I want to actually turn on my ad monetization on YouTube. And you started earning money. Like, Marv's now making money on YouTube. Marv is the surgeon for the Seahawks. What? Show, don't tell. If you really, and I think we all are, especially folks that they've painted themselves in a corner where they're uncomfortable having a conversation with your parents or your friends or your spouse or your whatever. And if you've done that, then the conversation around changing your lifestyle, pursuing a different thing, following your passion, your dream is so obvious. And you've done something for yourself as well. You've figured out that it's not some whimsical thing that you're just like, I'm bored of being a doctor, so I'm going to make YouTube videos up. And then you do something else 2 weeks later and something else 2 weeks later. Show, don't tell.
It's interesting. I have a slightly different mantra on that.
Cool.
Show and tell.
Ooh.
So...
Oh, I get it. I already go there. Just boom, I'm there. I get it.
I think people have to, like, the realities of trying to get something made and all that is you have to tell everybody what you're up to. Like, if people are going to be able to help you, and you are certainly going to need just an unimaginable amount of help if you're going to pull something big off. And even though in the beginning, a lot of times you're going to lose credibility with people, you're not going to gain credibility. Like when I first started telling people we're going to build the next Disney, people were like, yeah, you are. They were like, that's fucking absurd. What are you doing? Like, you already have this big company. It's thriving. Why the fuck would you leave? Like, it just seemed like utter madness to people.
Yep.
And I fully understand. There are times in a person's life where they're not ready to push back against that. They're not ready to disappoint people, probably largely in their youth. Maybe they haven't quite suffered enough. I found that suffering, like being unhappy, is not a game that I like to play. So it's possible I have a low threshold for that. Understanding your personality type is a very good thing. Understanding if you're hyper agreeable, which I am by nature, so I had to fight against that. And so in forcing myself to push back against my agreeability, I swung very hard in the other direction. And so now I have absolutely no problem being disagreeable. But when I first started telling people that we're going to build the next Disney, and I talked about the plan and how we're going to go about it, even now, I still lose credibility. And part of why I posted it on the website was so that when I execute against it, people would be like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, he called this 15, 20 years ago. And then the other part is, I need help. Yeah. So it's like, if you're able to shut people out, which not everybody's going to, so figure out where you are, have the self-awareness to figure out what's going to work for you at this moment. And if you need to be under the radar, be under the fucking radar.
Sure.
But at a certain point, to really supercharge what you're doing, to get people to glom on, to come be a part of your dream, you're going to have to fucking tell people.
And I cover that transition that we just went through in the book, and I think it's very wise for you to say it, because the show don't tell, that is a very narrow period where you are filled with self-doubt, and you're especially sensitive around the people that are close to you. Because if you flip the script and you're Marv's wife, and you've grown yourself accustomed to a certain lifestyle, or Marv's kids, like they want to go to private school, or fill in the, like, I'm being as cliche as possible.
Yeah, but now you're talking about the real traps.
Yeah, and the reality is that if they see you doing something that threatens them, it will create fear. And so the fear, if it's a kid, like, oh my gosh, what's dad doing? And in the spouse, like maybe she burned up her dreams. And so she's worried about you actually tapping into yours in a jealousy sort of way. And there's a lot of psychology in there, so we don't have to unpack all of it. But I do like the showing first, because you're not just showing them, you're also showing yourself. There's some tipping point where screaming what you're doing from the mountaintops is so valuable, and that goes into the community part. And when anytime you share a video and I see it and I'm snapping that heart or the like or the comment or congrats, dude, 1 million subs, like I'm along for the ride on you making the next Disney. Like, and that's the effect that it has, because people want to connect with something. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's a very powerful vehicle. That is it's like, I talk about it being this pull. The tractor beam, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a movement, and that's part of what I'm trying to unpack around creativity is, okay, yeah, it's a great, nice book, but I will bet all of the money in my bank account that the concept of creativity, especially as machines continue to elevate and their role in our culture, that things like creativity become extra interesting. So this is only going to accelerate.
Dude, have you seen the AI painting selling?
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. I think still a long way to go.
Could you get into that? Could you pay for a painting created by AI?
Not really, only because I like to have a connection with the piece and or the artist.
It's interesting because some part of my mind does flash to who wrote this algorithm, because I feel now a little bit connected to them.
Yeah,
but cool. I could actually really get into it. Like if it was, especially, there's something so fucking interesting to me. If there's like the sense of the ghost in the machine, where it's like it feels soulful, and you're looking at it, you're like, this fucking moves me. Like, holy shit, this was made by AI. Yeah. So it is. I try to temper my enthusiasm for AI because I fully recognize the potential problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very interesting to see where AI is going to creep into. Will it creep into the creative domain?
Sure.
Will that be
for sure,
the last place? But it does feel like it's.
I'm getting asked to consult on stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Not too much other to say about it, but just because I can't.
What would they want you to do? And I don't know if you can comment on this, but
so this is the philosophy of photography, right? Like I posited in creating the first iPhone app that shared photos to social networks through a touch of a single button.
Oh, yes.
And it's called Best Camera. And it was scoffed. It was laughed out the door. And I said, no, the best camera is one that's with you. It's not about the quality of the megapixel. Photos are about stories and moments. It's not about dynamic range or the megapixels. And in the future, everyone's going to have a camera. And it's not going to be about like the photos that are hanging in museums and on gallery walls are actually going to be a sloppy approximation of what culture is actually saying. And what culture is saying is going to be captured in the snapshot. And you're going to see it in things like Best Camera, where you have a real-time feed of images. Just to qualify this, I had to get special permission because there hadn't been a feed of images in Apple software, and they were worried that the concept of a feed was not something that they could stand behind. Feed, they didn't. Yeah, the concept of a photo feed in an app didn't exist, and this was real time. You could see it unfolding around the world. And I remember I launched it in September. It did go on to become App of the Year, and on New Year's Eve in September 2009, the real power hit me, which is I am watching culture unfold in real time all over the world. I'm watching fireworks shows in Tokyo and in Auckland and before they're happening where I am. Wow. We are predicting trends. I can tell what the colors are, what things that are like photographs of people and fashion and like it just was like a boom. So don't want to get too rat holy here, but the philosophy of photography, being able to say, oh yeah, not only are we going to be taking pictures and everyone's going to have it, but we're also going to be using photography to find out where we parked our car in the airport. We're going to be taking pictures of receipts. And we're going to be taking, and if there are 7,106 languages, which that's the current number.
That's a real number.
Yes. There's one that is universal. It's photography. You might be able to argue that music is universal. But I can show you a photograph of a new mother with a new baby. Doesn't matter where you're from, color of your skin, your sexual orientation, nothing, your identity. You instantly get it. And so I like that photography is this universal language. I wanted to get into that. And to me, that is part of what put me into the position to be thinking and talking about what is the future, not just of AI and art. I'm less involved in the painting side and more on the future of photography side, right. Cameras everywhere kind of world. I think that's fascinating. Equally fascinating, Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba, arguably one of the most data-centric, it's like mega Amazon, basically. Like, if you listen to his speech at the World Economic Forum last year, he said, my kids, they don't learn computer programming. That's for computers. My kids, creativity, painting, movement, human connection, all the soft skills.
Wow.
This is from Jack Ma. It's a fascinating, you can just look it up, Jack Ma or World Economic Forum, creativity. It'll blow your mind. It's like 90 seconds long, and he basically lays out that you would think he'd be saying, computers are going, no, computers, right. Computers are currently writing their own software, a robotic arm, when one hand bumps into something and it didn't predict that was going to happen. It writes the software on the code that tells the other arm, hey, next time you bump into it, here's how you should treat it.
Right.
It's writing code on the fly. So writing code, that's yesteryear, man. Creativity, that's next year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm very surprised that Jack Ma, of all people, is saying that, because I would think that it would almost become de rigueur that people would be able to code, like that the ability to manipulate a computer is where you want to end up, because even if computers are writing their own code, if you don't understand what they're doing, you're more likely to be taking advantage of it.
But do you need to understand how your water gets to your faucet?
Yes. So this goes back to sort of.
You do? Really?
I'll make a very bold statement.
Electricity? Do you really wonder how,
anything that you want to be in control of, you must understand how it works at a fundamental level. This is why I'm obsessed with the brain. It may be a weird thing of wiring in me. This may not be universal, but I will tell you this. once I understand something at a biological level, at a Newtonian level, right?
Okay,
I may never get to the Eisensteinian level. I certainly may not get to the quantum level.
Okay.
But when you get to an approximation that's close enough that gives you a visual image that you can hold on to, which allows you to then, because when you can manipulate the image, you can manipulate certainly the story.
Sure.
So when I understand, like take meditation, once I understood, oh, I'm trying to get out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic, diaphragm breathing for whatever reason is an evolutionarily designed trigger. This is a seesaw effect. You can't be in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic at the same time. So anything I do physiologically that pulls me over to the parasympathetic, now I know how to meditate. I actually understand what I'm doing.
Okay.
And so once I understand that, same thing with exercise, right? Once I understand the ATP system in mitochondria, then I understand what I'm trying to do with exercise. I understand why HIIT cardio is important.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not a fucking plumber. So no, I don't need to know how water gets to my tap. So that one I'm just going to take for granted.
Okay.
But I could be manipulated by a plumber if nobody else.
Sure.
And if a computer fucking speaks the language that I don't speak and they're doing all kinds of crazy shit, it does feel like I'm more likely to be caught off guard by something. So going back to the great hack. If you don't understand how your data is being collected. So I had a guy named Brian Johnson on Impact Theory, and he was like, Tom, I need to come on the show. I need to tell people that like data should be a universal human right. It's going to be the most monetizable asset ever, like in all of human history. What you do as a data they'll eventually be able to turn it into a brain, basically your brain. All of your behaviors will boil down to these things that are programmable into a neural network or whatever it's ultimately going to be. And then if somebody wanted to essentially rent your brain, if you don't control that, if you don't control the data upon which that is built, then somebody else is going to control that information. I thought, what the fuck? Like that had never occurred to me. And so I thought, Jesus, you want to talk about something where I literally didn't spend a second thinking about what my data was worth and what it could lead to. So in terms of like, I love, there's a romantic nature to like, my kids are learning movement and human connection, and that's rad. That is rad. And if you don't do that, just you're never going to have like the kind of life that you want to have.
Sure.
But man, it feels like there's other things that we should be thinking about.
But there's so much technology you take for granted that you don't even have that picture of.
That is sadly for sure.
Right. So like you're fucked. Because then you're paralyzed.
I don't know that.
How about flying? I need to go to the airport pretty soon. I got to fly at 7:25. Can I get to Burbank? Like, how far is Burbank from
Burbank
here?
will take you 40 minutes.
Okay, we got to be sensitive.
We're nearing the end.
We are.
Yeah.
So, but I just use flying for example as you understand. Maybe the picture is so simple that when you accelerate and you create a wing that's a certain shape, that air moves underneath faster than it moves over the top, which creates lift.
I guess what I'm saying is there are certain things that'll meet a threshold of importance. Flying, probably not one of them. Computers may be, if computers end up being the thing that run everything. But all right, with that, I'll stop there just because I know that we have to get you to the airport. But man, tell people where they can find your wonderful foundational book.
Awesome. It's available anywhere you buy books, and also at Creative Calling. There's a few packages right now. I don't know when we're going to be able to drop this episode, but if you want some special stuff, we're going to do some special class around Creative Live for the people who purchase the book. But just conceptually, wherever you buy books, thank you for supporting me and the book. It's been a labor of love. It's been years in the making, and I think creativity is it's powerful medicine.
Well said. Very, very well said.
I love the format of the show, man.
Thank you, man.
I want to keep going.
If only you didn't have to get on a giant flying bus.
I know. It's so sad, but like 2 hours went, Sam.
That fucking goes fast.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, very. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Go get the book. It's really fantastic. Everything you've done has been amazing, dude. I've loved following your career. Everything, your photography is fucking ridiculous. But honestly, Creative Live is a testament to what you're trying to bring to the world. So
this is the why. I realized I became a creator, identified as it. I started building tools, the iPhone app, built a platform for people to learn. The book is like, it's the instruction manual for putting all that shit together. It's the why.
I love it. There it is. Go get it. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
I have never seen or felt the world more alive, the people around me more alive, than when they are doing the thing that makes them feel great.